new numbers coming in right now as we speak, as votes are being counted in Michigan's most populous county. The Democratic primary Senate race is getting even closer, with moderate Congresswoman Haley Stevens behind, but gaining a bit. It is a race that could help decide who ultimately controls Congress. Let's look at this really tight battle. Progressive Abdul El-Sayed has a narrow lead, but the race at this point is still unresolved. No getting called the winner yet. Whoever wins, though, will take on Republican Mike Rogers in November. CNN's Harry Enton here now to run the numbers. All right, where is the outstanding vote and how large is the outstanding? Because that's the key, because even though these numbers look really tight.
Right. Okay, so let's sort of set the stage for you here, right? You mentioned, Sarah, the race is getting even tighter. When Johnny B was on at the top of the hour, the difference between them in terms of vote total was about 19,000. Now, we're going to zoom in very tight here. How much is Abdul El-Sayed ahead by now? A little bit less than 15,000. So we've had the gap close. We've had the gap close by 4,000 votes. So what we see is Haley Stevens absolutely getting this race tighter. Now, more than that, you right now see that the race is just a point. In fact, when you go down to decimal points, we're actually a race that is tighter than a point. Now, why is that? What is going on? What is tightening this race? Well, come with me. We're going to go down to southeast Michigan. We're going to go to Wayne County, of course, where Detroit is. And Haley Stevens has been doing quite well in Wayne County, right? She leads right now over Abdul El-Sayed by about 17,000 votes, or about 6 percentage points. That gap has been widening. More than that, it has been widening as the vote is coming. Right now, we have 88% of the estimated vote reporting. When Johnny B was with you at the top of the hour, that was closer to about 84% of the vote that was in. So as more votes have been counted in Wayne County, we see that Haley Stevens has closed that race. And there is definitely, as you can tell, there is still vote remaining in Wayne County. And that is a big reason why we have not projected that race just quite yet.
Trends that you're seeing here?
Trends that we're seeing here. Well, you know what? The Magic Wall has some fun little tools that you can sort of use. And one of my favorite tools that I love to use is this one. And what we see here, you can see that this is the vote over time in Wayne County, as it's been basically steady in terms of Haley Stevens having a lead. Now, if we zoom out, however, to the greater state of Michigan, and let's see if I can get that tool. Whoa. There we go. Take a look here. This is where it gets really fun, where you see that at the beginning of the night, Abdul El-Sayed had a very clear lead. He has held on that lead, but it has shrunk, it has shrunk, it has shrunk, and now what we're talking about is a race that is simply put it's just too tight for anyone to project it. Reasonable folks at this hour, we're talking about a race that is less than a point, as it's gotten tighter and tighter and tighter, and we still have potentially tens of thousands of votes still outstanding to count.
This makes it nail-biting for the candidates, exciting for those watching,
yes.
For us watching. But when you see two lines actually touching each other,
correct.
You know it's close.
That's exactly right. The two lines, which have been apart all night, are actually touching, though Abdul El-Sayed still has the advantage at this particular point, and we shouldn't lose sight of that.
By a little less than a point.
By a little bit less than a point, only a little bit less than 15,000 votes.
All right, Harry Enton, it's always good to see you. Thank
nice
you so much. I know you didn't get much sleep.
No, I got 1 hour and 20 minutes. I fell asleep on my couch. Not enough.
Not enough. Go to bed.
Let's
now go to Jeff Zeleny, who is very much awake, live this morning in Detroit. Give us some sense of the feeling there and what it sort of feels like to be in the middle of this while it is so incredibly tight, and whether or not you think people see a path for Haley, as the polls were showing very much so that El-Sayed was going to be the clear-out winner. That's not what happened during the vote.
Sarah, good morning. Polls at this point are absolutely meaningless, and as it turns out, they were fairly meaningless in the final days of this race, because the outcome, as Harry was just talking about there, is remarkably close, and all eyes on this nationalized contest are right here in Wayne County in Detroit. Over the course of the morning, as Harry was saying there, this has narrowed even more. We're about 14,000 or so votes are separating the two candidates. So Democrats here believe that there is still a path to victory for Haley Stevens. Now, she was very clear last evening that she will unite and come together, and talked as much about Mike Rogers, the Republican nominee, in her short speech last night as she did her own opponent. But just a few moments ago, we caught up with Abdul El-Sayed here in Detroit, and this is what he had to say about the narrowness of this race.
Look, we all understand the responsibility of beating Mike Rogers and Donald Trump, and the things that unite us are so much bigger than the things that divide us, and I think we need to start tapping into those things. And so for all the folks who might have supported my opponent, this is a big tent. We're doing the work to defeat him, and then also just to get money out of politics, put money in your pocket, pass Medicare for all.
Now, both of these candidates have said they would support the other, depending on the outcome here. The question, though, Sarah, is about these Democratic voters and the supporters here. Will they unify regardless of the outcome here? Now, the El-Sayed campaign, they are acting as though they are the winners here. But again, this race has not been called, so it's unclear if he will deliver a speech today. Also unclear if Haley Stevens will. They are looking at the same numbers that we are, and the reality here is that the clock is ticking between now and in November. But in many of these close elections, particularly here in Wayne County, we have to wait for all of these votes to be counted. But the Stevens campaign sees some hope in these mail-in votes. They did very well on mail-in votes that were coming in later yesterday. So we shall all take a deep breath and watch as the votes are counted and coming in. But there is no doubt this race is much narrower than expected. I asked Abdul El-Sayed about that. He said it was humbling, and he said that the polls in the final days obviously were not right. That's why they kept working. The Stevens campaign also was expecting not this close of a finish here. So again, we shall see how these votes proceed. But there's one thing is clear. Mike Rogers is the Republican nominee. The unknown is, will Democrats unify regardless of who is ultimately declared the winner? Sarah?
That's right. With right now at this hour, just under, this says 1%, but it's actually just under 1%, the difference in this race. And you and I have been in Wayne County, in Detroit, seeing how they count the ballots. This takes a while, but we will see. We could have it this morning. We will see what happens in the end. Jeff Zeleny, thank you so much for all your great reporting overnight and for us this morning.
We are watching this race get tighter in Michigan. The Democratic Senate primary there, Abdul El-Sayed against Haley Stevens. You can see right here, Abdul El-Sayed's lead is now just under 15,000 votes. Not even an hour ago, that lead was 19,000 votes. So you can see the margin getting ever tighter. Right now, there's 96% of the vote in. That seems like a lot. Where is there still vote to count? Again, I can take this down and we can look at every county where there's less than 90% of the vote reported, but there's only one. There's only one county, and it is Wayne County. This is the most populous county in the state, where you can see now there is 88% of the vote in and reported. Before it was about 84, 85, so we've seen more vote there. And you can see Haley Stevens is leading in Wayne County, and she is expanding her lead. That is how she is eating into Abdul El-Sayed's lead statewide. You can see right now she's got a 17,000 vote lead in Wayne County. Before it was about 14,000. How much vote is left here? This is really the one place where there is substantial vote left. How much vote is left in Wayne County? We think a lot of it's mail-in absentee count, which they have. They have those votes. They just have to count them. The New York Times is reporting there could be more than 10,000, 17,000. Is it enough to close the statewide gap here? Is it enough to close this 15,000 vote gap? Just not sure. But at this point, the race, it's too early to project. And Haley Stevens is narrowing that gap. So stay tuned as we get more votes in.